Okay, everybody, this conversation is quite interesting. It is where I sat down with Bill Maher at Club Random on his program. Let me first say, Bill treated me great. It was quite the conversation, and he was very pleasant, albeit at times rather crude, but very respectful. I do want to make sure you understand some of the, let's just say, environment around this conversation. So you will see in this video that Bill is smoking something. So just so you know, I don't like cigarettes, I don't like cigar smoke, and I certainly don't like marijuana smoke. Sometimes if you're a football player, you got to play in the snow. Sometimes if you're a baseball player, you have to play in the wind and the rain. Sometimes if you're a political commentator fighting for Jesus and fighting for liberty and fighting for America, you got to play in the weed. And so we talk about a lot of different stuff throughout this conversation. I'm going to break this up and tell you at certain moments I feel as if I should have injected myself more, some points that I wish I would have made, and honestly, some points that I think I did pretty well at. And so throughout this conversation with Bill Maher, I'm going to kind of interject and show you that, I wish I would have made this point about the resurrection, or I wish I would have said this about President Trump, or I wish I would have said this about Jesus Christ, or I wish I would have said X, Y, Z. And you'll see that. So here it is. And just so you also know, there was no really introduction. They didn't even tell me that we were rolling. I was just sitting there on set, and Bill Maher appears, and the podcast begins. So here it is, my appearance on Club Random, and this might be the first of many conversations with Bill Maher. Enjoy.
So you don't think any people are like born, quote unquote, in the wrong body?
No, I don't agree.
No?
I think people might think they are.
Club Random.
There's a book of the Bible I think you'd love.
What?
Song of Solomon.
Song of Solomon. Crosby, Stills, and Nash?
Song of Solomon's all about sex.
Club Random.
Charlie Kirk here.
I am here.
Kirk, reporting for duty.
That's what they call me.
How are you?
Nice to meet you. Thanks for having us.
Us?
Well, our game. Or me.
Is there someone with you?
No, thanks for having me.
You're not expecting trouble, are you?
Not quite.
Any trouble with security?
Unfortunately.
You do?
Yeah.
Wow. Like what kind?
You know, security.
Like bodyguards?
Yeah.
You know, when I went to Europe in 2015, I had like I had two Israeli bodyguards and my security person. It was right after the one of the Islamic unfortunate incidents. Was it the Paris? There was two big things at that time. Paris, right? The
What year was this?
2015.
Okay, so that would have been the Charlie Hebdo situation?
Hebdo certainly was the year before.
If I'm recalling, yes.
I think, and then there was
the tolerant Muslim. You know,
yes,
yeah.
and you know, I've been very...
You've been extraordinary on that.
Thank you. So like we were like extraordinary to you, but we were like very, and like I pictured this, I never toured Europe before as a comic, you know, and there are places you can where they speak English. It was fun, but it also made it a vacation. I took my girl I was with at the time. I pictured this bucolic, beautiful European springtime vacation. Of course, it was wedged between the two giant Israeli bodyguards the whole way.
If you want security, the Israelis know what they're doing.
Exactly. So it was not the vacation I planned. But, well, I'm sorry that you have to do that, but that's the price of fame. And boy, I mean, man, you're everywhere. You're like the new It Boy of podcasts. No, it's true.
We have different jihadis that want to kill me. The purple-haired jihadis, the woke guys.
Well, they want to kill me just as bad.
Probably.
Oh, they really do.
No, you've been very outspoken on the woke stuff. Big time.
Oh, yes. I mean, and they, just the way within a religion, they hate their own apostates more. I would say they hate me more because I'm supposed to like get on the short bus to Crazy Town with them, and I won't. And yet I'm still a liberal and still like, you know, I mean, we probably could argue all day about Donald Trump and what he's doing, which I'm not down with. But, you know, it's always the people who are closest who think, oh, gosh, you shouldn't have, you're a traitor somehow.
I was going to ask, is it because they thought you were one of them and that...
I am one of them. They're not one of me.
Okay.
It's the liberals who have...
So they've left you, not you left them.
Yeah, well, I feel like there's liberal and woke are two completely different things. It was the theme of my last stand-up special that I just did a few months ago. And it's basically, I mean, it wasn't the whole special, of course, but it was a large part of it devoted to that, to proving that case that, you know, what liberals believe, woke is something completely different. It's very often the opposite of it. You know, liberalism is, let's live in a colorblind society. That's the goal. Woke's goal is, we see race everywhere.
Race obsession.
Yes. Okay. So that's not liberal. You changed. Liberal is, there are two-state solution. Woke is river to the sea. Okay. Those are, so just don't take my word and say you're that. You took this and took it to, you got off the F train, you fell asleep, and you got off the 20 stops too far, and don't blame me for that.
Okay, and so then we dive into, of course, the topic of weed and alcohol. And I want to reiterate, I was a guest on his show. I did not want to come across as overly aggressive. I honestly wanted to get to know Bill Maher. Thought he's done a great job speaking out against the woke. He's a rare free speech liberal, despite our firm disagreements on many things, political and spiritual. And so here we have a discussion about marijuana and alcohol. And the point I so badly wanted to make, but I decided not to because in the spirit of being polite, is that his perspective is like, hey, why can't I do weed if it doesn't impact somebody else? The irony is that it kind of was impacting me because I had to smell him doing weed there. But I decided not to make that point in the pursuit of being polite and trying to be magnanimous. Albeit, look, there's so much about marijuana that does not get discussed. It could be really, really bad for your brain. It could be increased depression, increased anxiety, a lot of problems with it. But hey, if that's what you want to do, then that's what you want to do. I will say, though, it kind of invalidates one's argument if you say it's not impacting somebody else while you're smoking weed, basically, right next to somebody. Watch.
I don't know how they get in my group, but they do. And so I've been to sometimes parties like the Hollywood parties. And this is probably not most of America exactly this way, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's that different. And first of all, in this town, it's all run by like the Nepo babies. The Nepo babies, the trust fund kids, is all these little 22-year-old
The J.B. Pritzker types.
Well,
I'm kidding.
No, I'm sure. I know who you mean. The governor of Illinois.
He inherited the Hyatt.
Oh,
fortune,
sure.
You know,
well,
the Nepo baby. I mean,
we invented Nepo baby out here. Okay, but yes, it's everywhere now, even on the Lakers.
Hey, that's real privilege there. You know, you got some privilege if you can get.
Well, okay. I don't want. I want LeBron mad at me like he is at my friend Stephen A. But I mean, that is But the point is that when you go out to these, I've been to these parties where like it's a bunch of 22-year-old kids, and none of them are smoking pot. Why? They're on real drugs. Pot's so like my generation. It's like I couldn't find pot at one of these parties. I was the only, they were asking me for it. The few kids who wanted, they take this, they've
like
got
psychedelics or
correct.
mushrooms, LSD.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, ketamine, whatever.
Oh, ketamine, that has some medicinal
Molly,
property, but not at a party.
It's all ingested before they even leave the house. So that's where the good news, parents, your kids aren't on pot.
Yeah, they're on
way worse, I think.
They're on a big trip. So, but do you think that since we've legalized, less teenagers are doing, like 13, 14, 15-year-olds? Because that was always the argument, right? If we legalize it, less kids would do it.
I don't know what 14-year-olds are doing.
No, I don't know the answer.
That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
But we can
really
agree
don't.
that kids should. That's how we can agree.
Totally.
Yeah.
But we also should be able to agree that we shouldn't force adults to organize their lives around what kids might get into.
That's a good argument. I mean, do you think that it's...
I mean, you're not against porn, are you?
Well, I actually once struggled with porn. Thankfully, I'm free of that. But I mean...
How can you struggle with it?
I mean...
It's so easy.
Well, you could grow addicted to it. I mean, it can...
I know, I was kidding.
No, but no, I mean, yeah, I don't have that issue anymore, thankfully. But I would ask the question, though, like, do you think since the legalization of marijuana in LA, it's made it a better or worse place to live? Or just it hasn't changed at all?
It certainly hasn't changed my life.
Okay.
I grew up right outside here.
Do you think the quality of life has gone up or down?
Well, I don't know, but that's not really the relevant question, is it? Even if there is a deleterious effect, there is to many things we do, and we would not use that as a reason to prescribe our basic freedoms.
Should people
I mean,
be able to do drugs
should people?
outside, like on the street, or?
No, definitely not on the street.
Okay, so
I mean,
so there are some limits.
Of course, there
okay,
are limits.
yeah.
Yes, and maybe of certain drugs, or certain drugs should be by prescription, as we do with pharmaceutical drugs. But certainly pot is more benign than alcohol. I mean, I could give you the stats on that. We all know that. Is it health food? No, I'm not crazy like some of my hippie friends are, trying to portray it as something that's actually good for your lungs. But I don't think it's a trade-off. When you're an adult, you have the right to make trade-offs. Trade-offs is the essence of life. I'm going to have this piece of cake tonight and be a little fatter tomorrow, or I'm not going to do that and feel better tomorrow. And we all make those choices on a daily basis with everything. Yes, have I probably cut off some years of my life, maybe with pot? Who knows? I may have increased them because it helped me. Certainly made me richer. It made me better at my job, better at writing, better at a lot of things I like to do. So, I might be living in a 2-bedroom apartment in Van Nuys if it wasn't for pot, and I'm probably going to live longer here.
Or who knows how successful you could have been without it.
That's true too. That is true too.
Do you think there's any merit to the argument that the pot has more THC and is more intense than it was 30, 40 years ago?
It's so hard.
I don't know. I hear these things and
I hear those things too, and I'm sure that's true because once it became as commercialized as it has, of course you're going to try to maximize the potency of it. Just because the customer comes back, just like a restaurant, is not interested in your health. They're interested in making the food
selling more product,
delicious as they can,
and
so you come back to that restaurant. So, but it's so hard for me to tell you because I've been smoking for 50 years, and I'm different. Who knows what I was thinking? I mean, I remember when I first smoked, we would just sit in the car and laugh at nothing for an hour. That doesn't happen anymore. So my guess is the pot is stronger, but my resistance is weaker.
Okay.
Anyway, it's, people think I'm some sort of giant pothead. I've always been very circumspect about my pot smoking. I mean, I don't smoke every day. The most I smoke is right here, once a week. I like to be in party mode when I'm with someone I'm getting to know. This is one of the joys of my life. And, I understand that it doesn't connect with some people or make some people paranoid or something, but other people, it's just, some people like a scotch and some people like blah, 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 and some people like complete sobriety. If that's your thing, that's fine. But to me, the most interesting place I can ever travel is inside my own mind, and drugs do help you get there.
Do you think all hard drugs should be illegal? Like heroin?
Illegal? No. I mean, heroin, is there any uses for it? I mean...
Like for what San Francisco did, they pseudo-legalized it, right? I mean, they said, hey, we're going to make it easier for you to do heroin.
No, we shouldn't make it easier. That's crazy.
Where they had drug injection sites, basically, right?
That's so silly.
No, I know, but that was a public policy position
that-
of Seattle, Portland, and San Francisco.
That's the low-lying fruit for you right-wing.
No, that's a question.
No, but isn't it?
I want to create...
It's the low-lying fruit. It's like no...
Sure, it's a...
Right.
It's a boundary. I want to create a boundary.
And you're right. Again, I'm for picking that fruit too. It's silly to help drug addicts be drug addicts and keep them on the street. It's stupid to keep homeless on the street.
Oh, I totally agree.
There's another way. Liberals are different than the woke. The liberal thing forever was, for compassion's sake, get them off the street. That's not the woke version. Their version is, they're an endangered species. Don't touch them in their natural habitat, living under a bridge.
Let them defecate. Let them do whatever they want.
It's their thing. And, there should be nothing more basic than a government claiming the streets. The streets are for the citizens. Then it's not to live in. Build a barracks. I mean, why are these things, maybe you can answer that, why are these kind of things so difficult? You think, such common sense. Build a f***ing barracks. I know homeless people say they don't want to live there. You don't have a choice. Oh, we'll get robbed there. Hire security. It's pennies on the dollar. Why is it so difficult? I feel like with no real knowledge of this field, could do it. Could just, if I had people who would carry out I would say, okay, get me specs. I want to see where a place we could build it. I want to see what the barracks looks like. I want to see who works there. Is it really in the toilets, whatever? And somebody must be, Mitt Romney, somebody who did the Olympics, somebody who could come in and
we know how to clean up the streets. I mean, Gavin Newsom cleaned up the streets of San Francisco when Xi Jinping showed up. I mean, it's just an act of the will. They don't want to do it.
Right, like when they get the whores off the street, when the mayor is like doing one of those cleanup.
Or like when the MLB All-Star game goes to Seattle, all of a sudden it's America's cleanest city.
Right. So you're saying if we can do it that one day.
Well, I'm saying it's an act of the will. It's all that it is. And look, woke, I won't even say left, woke philosophy is they don't really believe in private property. And at its core, why shouldn't someone be able to defecate on the side of the street? Who are you to judge?
Well, that's not woke, yes, maybe.
I'm saying woke, not even liberal.
Right.
I'm making that distinction,
Right,
which I think is
good.
a fair distinction.
That's another reason. Another one we can add to the list of woke is not liberal.
I think left versus liberal or woke versus liberal is an important distinction.
Right.
I will say what makes you different is few liberals stand up to the woke.
And
few liberals are willing to stand up to woke.
Absolutely. And few conservatives stand up to Trump.
Fair enough. I mean, you can stand up or disagree, but I guess you could say the question, is Trump, woke is an ideology. Is Trump an ideology? I mean, he's a person. MAGA is an ideology. But I mean, I disagree with Trump on a lot of stuff.
Good.
I mean, I don't think we should go to war with Iran. I think that'd be a big mistake.
I've talked about Patriot Mobile's commitment to faith, family, and freedom. Have you made the switch yet? Support your values with your cell phone without sacrificing quality or service. Are you worried about coverage? Don't be. Patriot Mobile uses all 3 major U.S. networks. If you have a cell phone service today, you can get service with Patriot Mobile. Do you think switching is hard? It's not. Their 100% U.S.-based customer service team can activate you in minutes. They even have a contract buyout. So go to patriotmobile.com/Kirk25 or call 972-PATRIOT. Use promo code Kirk25 for a free month of service. And then we switched our conversation to the Maryland dad. Now, mind you, since I sat down with Bill Maher, a lot has happened regarding Mr. Garcia. We have learned that he has MS-13 tattoos on his knuckles. We have learned that he was not too kind to his wife. I believe I mentioned it in this conversation, but it has been even more emphasized in court documents. And so I decided to kind of hear Bill out here, but just to be clear, no U.S. citizen is being disappeared. This was a return of an illegal occupier back to his country of origin, back to where he came from. And again, we have learned a lot since this episode was recorded, so I just want to emphasize that this individual, Garcia, Mr. Garcia, is back in the country where he was born and where he is actually a citizen. We did not take an El Salvadorian and send him to Brazil. We did not take an El Salvadorian and send him to the Congo. We sent him back to his own country. He's not in a foreign prison. In fact, he looked rather healthy to me when the senator sat down with him. So I think Bill was a little bit off here, but in the spirit of allowing the conversation to pick up some momentum, I didn't want to be too disagreeable. I was trying to interject some facts. And again, you have to weigh these things when you're a guest on somebody's program. Do you want to just be overly disagreeable on every single point? You want to try to have the conversation gain some momentum. You want to try to have the conversation get some flight, to get off the tracks a little bit. Or else you're just going to be disputing every micro point, and then there really isn't much worth to that type of a conversation. Watch.
Also, when you get to, we're going to send homegrown American citizens to foreign prisons.
Oh, so the thing he said, you mean?
Homegrown.
To Bukele.
Americans.
No, and if he were to do that, I wouldn't support it.
Great.
But I think that is a one-liner that he gave to Bukele. I think that is, you met the man.
Yes.
Do you think he actually believes that? Like he would do that?
It's worse if he does or would. It's still horrible that an American president would say that. Look me in the eye and tell me if Obama had said that, what your reaction would be.
Wouldn't like it.
Wouldn't like it. I think it would be a little more vitriolic than that.
We'd be
apoplectic.
Upset.
Okay. I'm finding out how honest you are, Charlie, and
right,
so far I think you're doing good. And I hope I'm doing good with you.
But when-
Because if we don't have the honesty, we can't really,
Look, but to be fair to the whole, topic in general, the outrage around deportations, as we've seen, these last couple of weeks, is like the American people voted for it. It's perfectly legal.
Well, they didn't vote for.
They did vote for mass
disappearing
deportations.
people
So-
without any. I mean,
So you mean that Maryland case is what you're talking about, right?
the guy who they
The
said,
MS-13 member?
well, there's no evidence that they did not present evidence. I mean, I don't really want to get into the weeds on this one because I got to do it on my show Friday, but the Supreme Court, I guess we have to get into the weeds.
There's
it's-
even new
it's a-
evidence in the last couple of hours that I don't. You lead the conversation. You tell me how deep you want to go on it.
None.
Okay.
I mean, but I hope that if it comes to light, let me button it up this way. I hope that if it does come to light, that there really is no evidence that this guy was a gang member, that he got swept up, which is very understandable. That when you do a sweep, when you're doing big things, yes, nothing is going to go perfect. But if it does come to light, I would hope that some Republicans have the spine to say, yeah, that's not right. This guy should not be there. I mean, the Bill of Rights, it's pretty clear that you can't just disappear people without any sort of trial.
Well, but sorry to interrupt.
And deportation is not the same thing as sending someone to a prison.
But you are allowed to deport under the Alien Enemies Act.
Correct.
Someone who is part of a recognized terrorist organization, which
Well,
MS-13 is
okay.
pretty close to a terrorist organization.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, you're bending all these
And
words.
he's not an American citizen. We got to acknowledge
Correct.
that.
No,
right?
absolutely not.
So that's important.
But he wasn't here illegally either.
No, he was.
Illegally.
Yeah, the Maryland man. As long as we're not talking about two different cases.
We're talking about Garcia.
Yes,
Yeah.
he was an illegal immigrant to the country.
I thought he was waiting for asylum.
Well, you could be illegal waiting for asylum.
I see. So so they could deport him. That's right.
Yes.
But we never did it. But to a prison.
It's an edge case. I acknowledge it's on the edge.
Okay. Good.
No, but the edge is, so there's three ways you can deport people. It could be the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. It can be
Used only 3 times.
That's fine, but hey, look,
And
you quote the First Amendment all the time. That's from 1787, right? So old things are important. No, I'm just saying, just because it's old.
That's been used more than 3 times.
Fair enough, but just because things are old doesn't mean, and I'm not saying
No.
you're using
No,
that talking point, but some
I-
people are trying to invalidate it just because it's old.
Well,
It's also expedited release.
they're trying to invalidate it because it doesn't really apply to this. That it's stretching.
I mean,
it.
how is MS-13 not a terrorist organization?
Yeah,
I mean,
you can make
or
that.
Tren de Aragua. I mean,
Well, I
they're
mean,
organized, they have
because
funding.
because terrorism really is a political movement. It means terrorizing the civilian population to achieve a political goal. These guys just want to grab your locket. This is
It's a little more than that, though.
A lot more than that. Look, I've said that all this stuff I don't like about Trump. I did it in my piece the other week when I was talking about the meeting at the White House. That no, he was tweeting about me. I've never liked anything. No, check the tape. There are things I like, and one thing I liked was that the police have their morale back maybe now. And when you live in a city, it's not a good thing when the police lose their morale because they feel like they've been painted with a broad brush, which they were after 2020, and they're like, okay, yeah. And I've been very critical of the cops when I think they did bad things, but do I think that it's a racist, attack squad? It's not. There's issues. There's always issues in everything.
in big organizations.
And when you insult the cops, they have a way of kind of brooding about it, and it's just not a good place to be when you're a city dweller. And so I don't want to be killed by a gang member because they do random killings, just as gang initiation, so they can get the teardrop under their eye.
Mhm.
Okay, I don't want to be someone's teardrop tattoo, rando out to dinner. So I get it. I mean, these are the things that lost the Democrats the election.
100%.
You got to take care of this shit. I was just
And there's real Americans that die. I mean, Rachel Moore and Laken Riley. There's real, I mean, Jocelyn.
well, probably not at greater rates than are killed by regular Americans.
That's debated, but let's just put that aside. They shouldn't be here. And so none of those murders should have happened, right?
Right.
And so, anyway, back to the core question. Does the president have the ability to remove illegals that have come here under an enemy gang? Of course he does. Yeah, he has the power given to him by that law.
So then we kind of break apart a little bit where he wants to play Larry King. We'll watch this a little bit, just as a reminder. It started in the suburbs of Chicago. Turning Point USA has grown into this miraculous, amazing organization. Thank you for all who support it. Watch this short little thing, and then we get into the meat of the conversation, which is about Jesus and about religion. So this is just a little bit about the origin story, me being married to my wonderful wife, Erica, having 2 kids, and then the real fun starts. Watch.
So you're 31. What's your background? I'm gonna have to like Larry King this. Like Larry King used to just famously, and I love Larry. I did a show a billion times.
He was a legend.
Yeah,
I never met him.
And his thing was like, I don't prepare. I'm like the regular guy who just wants to know. He's curious about this person, so I don't know. So I ask the questions that this person would ask.
Mm-hmm.
You, Charlie Kirk, you're 31 years old. You're Jewish, right? No.
Yeah, that's Muslim, actually.
You're married?
Yes, sir.
How long have you been married?
It will be 4 years in May.
Wow. And kids?
2 kids, yeah.
2 kids already?
Yeah. Oh, we got to work.
Now, Charlie, it shouldn't be work. That's all I'm going to say. I'm
Metaphorical.
kidding. I
Yeah.
know.
It's an enjoyable work.
understand.
It's
Okay.
we got to the fun, I should say.
And and you're going to have more?
God willing. Yeah.
God willing. Right.
Okay, so now this is where the conversation about religion started. As you know, I'm a devout Christian. Watching this back, there are a lot of points I wish I would have made. However, I look at the clip, I look at the tape, and we had a friendly conversation, and I didn't want to be overly disagreeable. With that being said, there are definitely some things that I should have inserted.
Right. And we don't see eye to eye on the religion thing.
Someone told me that.
I got to tell you, you should see my movie Religion.
I actually saw it.
Oh, really?
And to your credit,
Thank you.
what you did on Islam was awesome.
The other one's not so much. That's
Correct.
right, buddy. That's
Secondly,
good.
so if you just isolate the Islamic part.
But it was funny. Come on.
Secondly,
Jesus.
to your credit, you treated woke like a religion,
Yes.
and you criticized them with the same
Yeah,
intensity and
Yeah,
ferocity
yeah.
you did, and you deserve a lot of credit for
Oh,
that.
thank you. I
No, I mean
appreciate
that
that.
because you looked at it as this has a
Right.
catechism, it has religious type
Totally.
undercurrents, it has almost a metaphysical presence to itself, and so you're an equal opportunity
Well,
critic.
I mean, yeah. And it's funny because the director of Religulous, Larry Charles, and I had dinner about a year ago, and I suggested, and of course it went nowhere because we're both too old to really act on it. But I said, people keep asking me, and I'm sure him also, to do Religulous too. But when they say it, they think we're going to, now we're going to go to India and make fun of the Hindus. I'm like, I'm not doing that. Okay, I'm not going to India, and the Hindus aren't that funny. Okay, we did it. The movie did great, and we love that it stands the test of time, and people always keep coming up to me and seeing it. Movies are amazing that way. But I said, somebody gave me a great idea. Why don't we do Religulous too? But the religion is wokeness.
Oh.
And then that's what I was suggested. And I said, yeah, but then you're going to have to do the right side of it too, because that's also a religion. Christian nationalism. I mean, come on. Your boys, some of the people I think you're fond of, they mix religion and politics in a way that I think is not according to the Constitution. But I have to tell you, I'll give you a lot of credit. I saw a video of yours where you were talking about how Christy the original documents were, which is, I mean, my view is that the founding fathers, we know a number of them were deists, mostly that was their religion, but you did and you have your facts down. I mean, you can spiel when you get on a subject
I
like
got
this.
the shtick down.
You really do. And I trust you. I'm going by but that they were a little Christier than I thought, and I'm always happy to learn new information. And if it doesn't satisfy people that I don't stay exactly where I am, it satisfies the people who are actually my fans, who always want me to do that, to be like, oh, if I take in new information. I mean, that's why, the far left hates me, because I went to the White House and said, well, privately, Trump's different.
And good for you for saying that.
And I didn't give an inch on anything I believe. I confronted him on things that I think, he probably maybe never hears from anybody else, but that's not good enough for them, because, they had to. But no, if you take in new information, just tell me. And so I do think, after listening to your spiel, that yes, they were a little more into Jesus than I thought. I mean, I know Jefferson wrote that Bible and
He heavily edited it.
took all the miracles out. He took all the religiosity out of it and just made him
A moral teacher.
a moral philosopher.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you have to admit, that's not exactly the act of a Christy person.
No, but at least he acknowledged that there was something profound there. Got to give him credit for that.
I could even acknowledge that.
Okay, that's good. No, I'm glad to hear you say that.
Jesus as a philosopher was a true revolutionary. I mean, when he said the meek shall inherit the earth, I think the response was,
Blessed are the peacemakers. Right.
yeah. But the idea that it gets good in the next life was fairly, I think, revolutionary. And the fact that, if you're a good person in this life, there's a much greater, this is just the pregame. You want the after party. The after party is just going to be awesome. You're up there with me and my dad, God, and it's just,
What do you think would create a better society or better action? People that think that there is an afterlife based on how you act, or people that think there isn't one?
That's a great question, because it certainly can turn people either way. It can make you fly planes into a building. I'm not speaking of any specific example.
I can't think of anything.
I can't either. But it can make you do that. You'll admit that.
Sure.
Okay.
It could also make you do, blow up Oklahoma City too.
Yes. And it can also,
I fully acknowledge.
And I fully acknowledge that it also keeps millions of people in line. Like Mark Wahlberg. I'm guessing without Catholicism, he just looks like a guy who'd be in a lot more trouble. But I think it just has made his life, much more under control. So there's one. Mark Wahlberg, I think, really benefits from Catholicism. But I think there's lots of people like that. They truly are worried that if they do something out of line, illegal or immoral, that the devil will, in short order after they die, be poking them in the ass with a pitchfork, and so they don't do that. And I got to give it up. That is a positive. But then the planes and the buildings thing.
No, and that is on the extremes of, of course Islam has to defend itself. I won't defend Islam. But are you at all worried that when a nation becomes too secular, it might not know what it believes? There's no cultural cohesion. There's no glue that keeps it together.
Yeah, but this isn't that nation. This isn't secular. This is a bunch of religious freaks.
Increasingly secular, though.
Well, thank you. I'm trying.
No, but
I appreciate it.
You are quite the evangelist for your cause of no afterlife and no creator.
You know what? It creeps up a little, but people always are going to want it. People always are going to want to believe a story. It's much better than the truth, which is that things are random. We don't know the big questions. We don't know how we got here. We don't know why we're here. We don't know how the universe started. We're alone in the universe. Is there a God? What is the nature of God? Which one is the right God? We just don't. Nobody knows. I mean, that's why they call it faith.
Do you hope you're wrong? That's the most important question.
That's a great question. Well, how
do you hope there's a heaven?
I hope they figure out how I can live forever. I like it here with you, Charlie, drinking this and smoking pot.
Fiji,
I'm having a great time. I really can't imagine it better. I mean, I can't. And maybe it is. I'm sure it is. I'm sure, people have...
But something in you probably hopes that, I don't know,
yes,
Hitler gets ultimate judgment, or the most evil things, right? Something in you wants to see your loved ones, and
I don't think about Hitler.
no, but there's got to be a desire
a
somewhere.
lot of people just think about Hitler a lot.
Stalin, Mao.
I know,
mean,
but I'm just saying Hitler comes up a lot.
fine.
He really
Fair enough. Let's that there's a desire that there's something beyond this.
Well,
that is just.
okay. Yes, I do, but I mean, it's very hard to find that justice on earth. Ask an AIDS baby.
No, don't, Bill. That's why when you say, "Hey, I'm happy here," there's a lot of suffering on earth too, and that's the
It is,
that's the Christian argument,
and
right?
some of it is we obviously can see it comes from no bad deed done. Children with cancer.
Of course, it's
and then they say, well, that's God works in mysterious ways, which is sort of a get out of jail card.
It's the
for
hardest
any kind of non-thinking.
Admittedly, it's the hardest. We as Christians have to explain unjust suffering. Atheists have to explain everything else.
How do you explain it?
We don't. It's hard. It's a mystery. We can say God works in mysterious ways. We can say original sin. However, we don't have to explain creation or the miracle of life or love or justice
We don't have to explain it either because it's not explainable, because we don't know. We say we don't know. That's honest. You say, no, somebody told a story a long time ago, and we're going to stick with that. That to me, I'm not trying to be insulting.
You can't offend me, trust me.
Great.
I mean that. So
All
you
right.
could be as crude or as blunt.
Okay,
I mean that. It's not.
But I find that intellectually embarrassing.
It's fine.
As my friend Frank Turek would say, it's impossible to know because of the ripple effect, which is this. We believe in Romans 8:28, God will work all things for good for those who love him. But this is the idea, that every event in this world ripples forward to trillions of other events. Unless you are the all-knowing being and have eternal perspective, how do you know that these tragedies that are objectively evil will not work together for good in the end? Perhaps there are many good things that will come out of tragedies in individual lives that we'll never hear about. In fact, good results may even come from generations from now, unbeknownst to those who will never experience them. Maybe a baby getting cancer today, which is awful and just unspeakable, sends forth a trillion ripples that is partially responsible for bringing forth a great evangelist 500 years from now who saves millions of people. Only God can track all those ripples, and only God can weave all those things for good. Keep watching.
And so, is there any part of the Bible you think is true?
Well,
no, it's
true.
an important question.
Well,
meaning, when they were documenting King David,
yes.
Was King David a real figure?
There are shards of it that are, I'm sure.
So Jesus was a real person.
Well, that we don't know. That is not a definitive.
Okay,
it really is not, and I'll tell you why. And I'm sure you know this. The Gospels are written from
70 AD to 120 AD.
Correct.
Yes.
So they're
about 30 to 40 years after Jesus' life.
No, they're from 40 to 70 years after Jesus' life.
Yeah,
the earliest one is Mark,
mm-hmm.
and that's the one with 70 AD. It's the destruction of the temple. That's why it's the bleakest one. It's the one that ends with, Father, why have thou forsaken me? Okay, so we see that history does involve itself in what's going on. You kind of have to read between the lines. But here's the question I've asked before here. How come the Gospels, we know everything in the New Testament is either the Gospels or St. Paul.
Or the book of Acts, which is written by Luke. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
The book of Acts is the best evidence that Jesus is real. But
okay.
Go ahead. Yeah.
But Paul lives in the 50s. He's much closer to Jesus' time.
Correct. Yes.
And he knows much less about Jesus. He really doesn't even imagine him as a figure that lived on earth. He's more like a God from heaven.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, that's in St. Paul.
No, he talks about the literal ministry of Christ.
He certainly doesn't. Okay, you'd have to show me that, because my recollection, and this is from a course in college, is that he was not, that we know very little from St. Paul about Jesus, and he understands Jesus very, whereas the Gospels written later, they have a lot of information about this guy. And of course, they also penciled in the crucifixion like 300 years later. I mean, the Bible was edited. And the Bible itself is an anthology of books. There's the Dead Sea Scrolls. There were books that didn't make it into the final cut.
Like
There's
Book of Enoch, Gospel of Thomas, Gospel of Judas. I fully acknowledge
the director's cut, right?
So Well, there is a lot of contradictory stuff. For example, in the Gospel of Thomas, why it wasn't included, that Jesus is in the water, Jesus is in the leaves. But there's other extra biblical accounts, though, that show that Jesus was a real figure outside of the Bible.
He could have
He's
been.
mentioned in the Talmud, for example. He's mentioned in Roman historical documents like Herodotus and many others.
Excuse me, Herodotus was Greek. Herodotus was 500 years earlier.
Not Herodotus, I'm sorry. I'm thinking of a different...
Suetonius?
It's a different Roman...
He's Roman.
It's a different Roman
Right.
historian.
But Herodotus was the lying
maybe
father of
100 or 200
Yeah.
years later. Not Herodotus.
Okay.
Point being is that there were other historical extra biblical accounts.
So this portion, it gets very technical, and this is all about the dates of the Gospels. Again, I got to give credit to my friend Frank Turek. In his book, I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist, which I'm going to send a signed copy to Bill Maher, which I think would be great. All the Gospels, we know, were written prior to 70 AD. They don't mention the Jewish war or the destruction of the city of Jerusalem and the temple in 70 AD. This would be like writing a history of the Twin Towers and not mentioning they were destroyed on 9/11. And the gospel writers write as if the temple and areas of Jerusalem are still standing while they are writing. For example, in John 5:2, it says that there is a pool called Bethesda, which wouldn't have been the case after 70 AD. Dr. Jonathan Bernier authored the most recent complete book on New Testament dating. He concludes that every gospel is prior to 70 AD, with Mark being the earliest at 42 to 45 AD. And every other New Testament book as also prior to 70 AD, with only a few shorter books having an estimated range that passed beyond 70 AD. Matthew, who wrote the gospel, was an apostle. He wrote prior to 70 AD. And I thought that was the case when I was sitting down with Bill, but actually I was like, oh, I think he was an apostle. And I didn't say anything, but it turns out he was an apostle. So on this idea of Paul not quoting Jesus, first, let's hear what Bill has to say, and then I'm going to respond to it. Let's listen.
Okay.
Let's contend
it doesn't
that,
even matter to
let's
me.
contend Jesus was real.
Yeah, let's contend.
But then, so the resurrection is the pinnacle of the Christian faith.
Of course.
Cool.
Yes. We're coming up on Easter Sunday.
Because if it's probably rational that if Jesus was real, because we know that at least his apostles were real, right? And they likely wouldn't have died the death they had if it wasn't for Jesus's
How do we know
ministry.
the apostles were real?
Well, not just
mean,
because of their own first-person testimony, but other extra biblical accounts.
We know that the Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John of the Gospels are not the same people who were his apostles, right?
Well, Matthew was a tax collector, right?
Matthew, who wrote in 70 AD, was
not the Matthew that's the disciple.
Thank you.
But Luke was a hired physician.
Luke was a physician
who was hired to write to Theophilus. Basically, a rich guy was like, "Hey, go find out about this Jesus guy."
Right.
Right.
Okay.
And basically, Theophilus, lover of God, which is, in my opinion, the most compelling of the two documents. But we do know objectively that, like, Peter was a real person, right?
We do?
Oh yeah, without a doubt.
Peter, the guy who upon my rock you shall build my church?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, St. Peter's Basilica. We know Paul was real for sure, right?
Paul, yes.
Yeah, and Paul talks about Peter. Paul talks about Timothy, right? He writes to Timothy. So they have dialogues back and forth about Jesus.
So Bill is like 5% right. Paul doesn't quote Jesus very much because he was converted after Jesus ascended to heaven. But here's the truth. The Gospels recorded what Jesus said, so it wasn't necessary. In fact, the restraint of all the epistle writers in not making up quotes from Jesus, which would have been tempting to do in order to resolve disputes among, like, circumcision, which Bill makes fun of, tongues, or women in the church, shows that they were being true to Jesus. They weren't inventing things, he said, although it would have been convenient to do so. This is the critical point, everybody. The dating of all the documents are not as important as the dating of the sources. For example, if you write a book about the events of 9/11, right now, 23 years later, the fact that you are interviewing eyewitnesses from that time is more important than when you're writing it down. The same is true of New Testament events. In the 15th chapter of 1 Corinthians, Paul writes down the testimony he received from others and the testimony that was authenticated when Christ appeared to him. So where did Paul get what he received? he probably received it from Peter and James when he visited them in Jerusalem 3 years later after his conversion, as we know in Galatians 1:18. Why is this important? Because as the legendary Dr. Gary Habermas points out, even liberal scholars believe that this testimony was part of an early creed that is within 1 to 3 years after the resurrection. Since these creeds predate the writings, when you're reading the New Testament documents, you're reading testimony far closer to the events than the dates of the documents themselves. The creed from, for example, 1 Corinthians 15 goes right back to the time and place of the resurrection. Therefore, it's unlikely to be describing a legend. Moreover, notice that Paul cites 14 eyewitnesses whose names are known: the 12 apostles, James, and Paul himself, and then references an appearance to more than 500 others at one time. Included in those groups was one skeptic, James, and one outright enemy, Paul himself. By naming so many people who could verify what Paul was saying, Paul was in effect challenging his Corinthian readers to check him out. Let's listen to more of my conversation with Bill Maher.
I guess let's just pretend Jesus is real. Again.
Yes, okay, he could be.
Why fake the resurrection then? Why? No, that's a good question.
Well,
if you are the
okay.
follower, let's think about this, because it is probably the most important event in human history.
You didn't have to fake it. I mean, you do realize that there were religions going around the Mediterranean for 1,000 years where the gods had the same biography or significant parts of the biography of Jesus. It's in Religulous. We put it in gods who were born on December 25th, and I could go into the reason for that, gods who had disciples, gods who were crucified on some sort of tree.
That had virgin births.
Because
they were hearkening back to Old Testament prophecy.
But no, these were all sorts of religions around the Mediterranean, not just the Judeo-Christian. These are the Persian religions. This was Indian, and that's a very common part of it, is died and came back to life. It's obviously something primitive man would have thought about all over the world. The fact that they put this into this new religion, which something that the people of the time would have been familiar with, these concepts. Again, that's why they made his birthday December 25th, because that was already a huge pagan holiday.
No, for sure. And the Christian argument is we redeemed that to become Christmas. But let's just take the resurrection, though. Why would the apostles willingly go and spread what then became their death certificate? Why would they go and do that if it didn't actually happen? Like, take Paul. We both agree Paul was legit and a real person. Paul was a Jew, persecuted Jews, and then had his, road to Damascus moment. Why would he do that? Except for the fact that he's crazy or delusional. What incentive would Paul have to do that? Rich, ruling class, gave up everything.
You're saying to me, is there never a case of human delusion or mass delusion, or people can? Why
there's suicide cults? Of course, I acknowledge that.
I'm going to answer your question. Do you remember the Hale Comet cult, Heaven's Gate cult?
No, I know Jonestown cult.
That's different. Hale. This was 1997, and they believed. There was this bunch of people in San Diego, and they believed that when the Hale-Bopp comet passed at a certain place, that the spaceship was going to pick them up, but their souls, they had to be dead. And they committed mass suicide neatly. They were living normal lives, going to jobs, saying, I'm sorry, you're going to have to change gates for your flight. And then they went home and put on
sneakers, right?
Purple shrouds and Nikes.
That I do know of, yes.
And mass suicide killed themselves. And you're asking me about, could humans believe something that wasn't true? Yes, they could. It doesn't take a hell of a lot. People want to believe, and it's a very enticing thought that this life, which possibly isn't that great, if I just give up this one, which is not that much, I can get this awesome one in the capacity, the human capacity to believe what's not true, to believe what you want to believe, is infinite. You are literally the person I'm talking about at the very beginning of the movie Religulous, because the very first scene I'm sitting in the car and I'm saying, the movie is not a spiritual quest. I mean, that's what we told them, so they'd sign the release. The movie is me saying, I don't know how it could be that so many intelligent people can wall off a part of their mind and believe in something that part of their mind must know is not true. That's the question I'm going for.
Here's what was missing and should be added. The Hale-Bopp people weren't dying for an empirical claim that a man rose from the dead. Unlike the disciples, the Hale-Bopp people were dying for a claim they couldn't verify or falsify. Some people will die for a lie they think is the truth, but no one will die for a lie they know is a lie. Big difference. The apostles were in a position to know whether it was a lie or not. They went to their deaths anyway. They verified with their own senses that Jesus had risen from the dead. Paul was crucified. They hunted down Thomas. They hunted down James. They all died brutal deaths for something they saw and they knew that was true.
And like, you're obviously a super smart guy.
And respectfully, you go ahead, sure. No.
And again, I don't want to insult you on that. I appreciate you saying
that.
No,
I mean, Bill, have you seen me go to college campuses? There's nothing that
right,
can fake.
But you understand my question, right?
Interestingly, ironically, I have the same struggle. I don't know how somebody as intelligent as you, and I'm not trying to offend you,
cannot believe in a virgin birth?
Time out, hold on. All of that takes faith, I acknowledge, but that all of the fine-tuning of our universe, if any of those fine-tunings were off, a famous scientist...
Some of them are off.
A famous scientist said, to believe that the universe and the earth in its current composition was an act of randomness would believe that a hurricane would go through a junkyard and assemble a 737 flight-ready Boeing.
He's wrong.
Okay, that's fine, but there are so many fine-tuning aspects to our existence that I think defy the idea that this is all randomness and all chance. Now,
you know, that's not logical. You're saying because I don't know the answer, I'm going to assume the answer must be that a divine intervention did it. That's not really a scientific way of looking at it.
The teleological view, not the cosmological view, is that all of these fine-tunings, when layered up one after the other, it defies, I think, reason to think that this is just a roll of the dice. That when you see a baby come into the world, when you see how we naturally heal, even consciousness itself, I think, is a pretty miraculous thing. To think that's all just a bunch of happy accidents, I think it's more rational to think that that's a byproduct of design.
You're saying some prime mover made it so these things happen. I would say if a prime mover could do that, why don't skip all the suffering and why don't you just get us to where we're the perfect thing? Why you need things, I don't know, but okay, the perfect being right away. We're somehow on this journey to being, completely immortal and healthy, I guess, and completely moral and don't fuck each other up and don't have sex with children and all the bad things we do.
All the evil of our world.
Yeah, all the evil. And the Holocaust, and why go through all that if you are a prime mover? I assume that means you can do anything, and just get us right to the end, and then we can just, why? Just a bunch of us walking around being perfect? I mean, why is that interesting to a God? The whole thing just don't make sense.
So that's a separate question, though, of whether or not there is something behind our existence. I mean, so we believe that the universe started with a Big Bang. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, but that's not the beginning of things. That's just the beginning of what the known universe is. The big question is what was before that.
And we believe it's a being, a God. That's always, that's a constant.
And look, I mean, the misnomer about atheism is that we say, oh, there's no God. No, we just say we don't know. As Richard Dawkins always says, there's theism, which is belief in gods. And they used to believe in many, and then it got to one, and we just believe in one less. So there's just not.
How would you differentiate that from agnosticism?
There isn't.
Okay,
that's another thing that's bullshit.
No, I don't. I'm just asking a good faith question.
No, I think a lot of atheists think that. A lot of people on my team with this, they have that view that don't split hairs with the atheists and the agnostics. It's like. We're on some part of, I don't know, and I'll never know, so I really don't think about it a lot. I don't get up for church. I try to be a good person because I just think intrinsically it's good for society. It's good for me to be a good person as much as I can. And I don't need the threat of the pitchfork in the ass to do it.
Can I ask a question? So how
Ow!
but you even acknowledge though that some people act better if they feel as if they'll be judged eternally.
Totally.
Okay, no, that's a big admission. But
Yes.
how do you think society best determines what is good?
That's a great question. I mean, isn't that what government is always wrestling with?
What your meeting, I thought, was a great window into the whole liberal world that shows the Donald Trump that I know and that I've gotten to know, which is, and I just thought it was hilarious when he was, asking you about Iran, right? He'll ask anybody about anything. He loves asking people's opinion. He
Right.
listens more than he talks.
Right.
He'll
No, that-
solicit opinions. I know it blows people's minds when we say this.
Well, it also blows our minds because then he doesn't do the right thing.
Sometimes he does.
Sometimes he
moved
does.
the embassy to
And
Jerusalem.
I
secured it.
listed.
I know you
I
have.
gave that whole list.
So you
I
got-
also gave the list
Yes,
of
you did.
things that are horrible: disappearing people and ignoring judges and gutting the government with glee. This tariff thing that even the conservative press has turned off on. So, yeah, it was just honest down the line on both sides.
Do you feel?
I just told you what I saw
and good for you.
and didn't. And I just told this to Harvey Levin on his show. I'm proud. I looked him in the eye and said, "You're scaring people." I'm proud. I looked him in the eye and said,
How did he react to that?
I said
No, I mean,
that-
I'm not.
I know, but see, that's the thing. I said that the night I gave it. I said, "You're scaring people. Why do you want to scare your own citizens so much?" And I know everybody wants to know what he said. And the truth is, I don't remember. But it wasn't.
What kind of drugs were you guys doing that night?
But it wasn't okay. I'll stop.
Okay, then you would have remembered.
That I would have remembered. So I have no illusions that my dinner with Donald Trump is going to change the nation. But to the haters, it's just like, as opposed to what? Not engaging at all.
That is their.
It's either me or Gretchen Whitmer with the binders
Where
in
she's
front
hiding.
of her face. I mean, I feel like I did it better. I went in there. I didn't give 1 inch on what I believe, or saying to his face what I believe. But I told the truth about how he's different in private.
Do you think what do you think about the idea? You going, here's how I would frame it. You going to meet with Trump would be the equivalent of Biden inviting me over for dinner. Meaning,
Yeah.
is that fair?
Absolutely.
Okay, I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Absolutely.
Why do you think Biden or Obama wouldn't do that and Trump did?
I mentioned that too in the thing. I said, you know what?
You did. But
I said, because look, this was kind of a guy's dinner. And Donald Trump is a man of a certain age, of a certain way of life. I just think he's comfortable with the guys. And I also think he loves his wife more than is let on. But he just likes being with the guys. And it was a guy's dinner. And we just had a good guy's time. And so I said it, I voted for Obama, I voted for Clinton, but the idea that I could talk to them as freely as I felt this conversation was going is emblematic to me of why the Democrats lose the elections. Because they just don't feel that this is like a real person. And I know it's so weird to say that about Donald Trump, who I've said a jillion times is, a whiny little bitch. I mean, I could go through my greatest hits of insults, but this was about getting past that. Well, I can't tell you how much I enjoyed this.
well, thank you.
I mean, again, I'm sure there's something that I'm not asking you
I've been
that
an
I should
admirer, Bill, of
be.
yours for a while. We're on different planets, obviously, on the
Yeah.
spiritual, religious stuff. But when you spoke against the woke, that for
Yeah.
me was a proving moment.
No,
and I have to say something, and this is 100% true. You had more moral courage than pastors that I know that went along with
Well,
the woke
thank you.
crazy train. And you deserve credit for that.
I appreciate
because it was
that.
of high cost. They were intimidating.
No, and part of the joy of doing that, because it's such an easy target and they're so terrible, and they combine bad ideas with a bad attitude. So when I see somebody, as I've seen so many videos of yours, where you're just taking them down, and you do it like Edward R. Murrow. I mean, you just can destroy them. If I agree with you on the premise, it is a pure joy to watch that.
Thank you.
Yeah, it is. And you know, I know you don't think you're doing a giant service for the Democratic Party, but you are, because until we get rid of that shit, they're never going to win another election.
I agree. They're not going to take political advice from me.
No, but they might from me.
They could.
Not
And they should, but-
Not the 10%, but that's 10%. I mean, that was the good news about this Trump dinner thing. Like the people who hated me before, it didn't go up. I looked into it. It's the same 10%.
But they're very loud.
They're very loud, but that's it. And I, you know, as FDR once said, I welcome their hatred, because they're just, first of all, they have no integrity. They don't ever present the full argument. They just cherry pick. I mean, everybody does it to everybody. So I'm not saying I'm unique here, but that is part of the problem of our discourse, is that everybody just wants to forward their narrative. No one is really interested in the full truth. Just the truth. Just give me the truth. And that's the crowd I'm going for.
Yes.
You know, and
And to be honest, when I go to these campuses and we're drawing these huge crowds, in some ways, we're benefiting from the ways that the old school comics would benefit on college campuses, because we're saying the stuff you're not allowed to say. Like, we are the rebellion type energy.
they must be so thirsty for it.
Of course. And like
They're kids.
Yes.
It's like innate that they want to be, here's something that's not politically correct.
Yes. And you think about it, it's like you're a guy on a college campus at any one of these tour stops we're going to, right? Boise State, University of South Carolina, Oklahoma State University. And they are constantly in this bubble of, if I say one wrong word, I could have my entire career ruined. If I say the wrong joke, if I laugh at the wrong thing, if I use the wrong pronoun, they're living in a totalitarian environment, a cultural totalitarian one.
Okay, you're gonna have to stay a little more, because I want to ask you about this, because now you got me on colleges, and you know that's been one of my big
No, we got to talk about this.
that's been one of my big targets.
Big time.
I mean, it was in my book, it was in my special. I called them the mouth of the river from which all the nonsense flows.
It is the Wuhan laboratory
Was
for
my
the woke. Yeah, I probably got it from you.
I did. I said, if ignorance is a disease, Harvard Yard is the Wuhan wet market. That was my joke.
I got. Now we could say Wuhan lab, but yeah, that's right.
Okay. And Trump's going after the colleges now.
Which I fully support.
Yeah, but as always with his shit, it's like, it's not exactly legal the way he's doing it. You know, it's coercive. It's, I get I am behind the feeling of it. I'm not sure this is the way to do it, but the feeling of it, yes, they have become places that, and this is again one of your big bailiwicks. You know, this is one of the places you really got to. I think this has helped you get where you are. They have become places that are two things: not really interested in teaching, just getting a point of view on the world into the kids' heads, which is not the way it was when I went to college at all. And also just very anti-Western civilization.
Completely.
And this is Western civilization. And you live in Western civilization. You're soaking in it. You're enjoying it.
Yes.
All the things that make your life, and especially the life of minorities and oppressed people better, come from Western civilization. Rule of law, scientific inquiry, freedom of speech, democracy, all the things, women's rights, gay rights.
All of it.
All of it is Western civilization. And the question is, how do you extirpate that from universities without, I mean, he's going after the research money. It has nothing to do with this.
It does and it doesn't. I mean, so first of all, you're right. Let's just start with our agreement. Colleges have become a place where they want everyone to look different but think the same. Their idea of diversity is like, okay, we look at the yearbook photo and everyone has race diversity.
Everything has to look like Angelina Jolie's Christmas card.
But they all think as if they're at the Democrat National Committee meeting.
Right.
There's no diversity of thought. There's no heterodox opinion. They tried to get Western civilization taught at Stanford. You know this story. Well over 15 to 20 years ago. And they removed it. They removed it from the core curriculum.
Really?
I'm going to be honest. These places have to be basically burned to the ground.
We'll see then. This is,
Metaphorically.
Okay, metaphorically.
Yeah.
Well,
Meaning look, take Harvard. So you say the research money. First of all, they take 10 to 15% of that in overhead. Why does Harvard, with a $50 billion endowment, need $2 billion in research money?
Just ask Harvey the same question.
That's a hedge fund with a college attached.
Right.
That's not a university.
Right.
Right? I mean, that's something completely different. Stanford, $40 billion endowment. Yale, $35 billion endowment. And look, some of this research is awesome. And I got to agree with you. Some of it they should do a case-by-case basis. But a lot of it, though, is this woke stuff that would take your breath away. I mean, research into transgender mice. I mean, it was just the U.S. taxpayer dollars should be funding that.
See, I called that out on my show. That was bullshit. It wasn't transgender. See, that worries me about you, Charlie. You seem to have swallowed that one whole like a snake does a mouse without looking into it. It was transgenic mice.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It was not, but it's hugely different. Transgender, that's just going along with what the mob thinks. It wasn't. He got it wrong, and no one was around to tell him that he got it wrong. He just went with it. Transgender. It wasn't transgender. It was transgenic. They were studying mice for health reasons, serious cancer-solving reasons. Nothing to do with transgender. So
I stand corrected on that.
Okay, but
a lot of these universities have superfluous research departments that are bloated, and then go raise your own money for it. Is my position. If you want to go do this stuff, go raise your own money.
No, of course. So as Christian as you are, you don't want us to be the Christian United States of America.
I want to see the body politic become Christian, but I want the Constitution to be our North Star.
Not by coercion.
No, because that's not love, that's force.
Okay.
We as Christians believe you should voluntarily use your agency, give your life to Christ.
And you and you think that someday we all will get on the train there?
I don't know if I'm optimistic or pessimistic. I don't know. It's tough. The church rates are going down.
Right.
I mean, we're seeing a little bit of a plateauing there. Your side's been winning, Bill, the last 20 years.
You're going to be tired of all the winning. That's all I'm going to say.
But are you cheering for those church rates to go down?
Yes.
You think it would make the world a better place?
I do.
Has it made Europe better?
The idea that you think we need Christianity as the pillar here to hold up this edifice, that I can't agree with.
I think you could agree that there's a Christian inheritance that is unique. And that's Tom Holland's argument, who's an atheist.
That's true.
And that there's something we've inherited of these.
Well, what we do know is that the ideas of the Enlightenment were ideas from people who were Christian. I mean, obviously Rousseau and John Locke and the people here in America.
It was very Christian. It gave us
Christian. I mean, Christianity to varying degrees. Again, deism. Again, Thomas Jefferson taking Jesus out of his miracles out of the Bible. So but that's the basic tradition. It is a Western tradition that we seem to have to always apologize for. I'm sorry.
No, I'm not.
No, I'm joking.
But
I'm
no,
saying,
if America was 81% Christian or 81% Islamic, what's a better country?
Yes. According to the ideals I believe in, if you think faith, I know you do, is the most important thing, you might think Islam. But I happen to think freedom is the most important thing. Personal liberty, again, human rights, rule of law, scientific inquiry, democracy, freedom of speech, all these things which are absent much more in those societies than the society I live in.
Totally.
All right, Charlie. Okay. Charlie.
Bill, thank you.
That was a
pleasure.
Real fun.
Thank you.
Okay. Tell your friends.
Happy Easter, Bill.
Happy Easter. He is risen.
He is risen indeed.
Club
He is risen.
Random.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. We wanted to do it for a while.
Yeah.
And I know you wanted to do this before real time.
Yes.
But now that we did this, you could do real
I would love to. Yeah, I wanted to get to know you.
Yeah. I think it was better this way
Absolutely.
first. And
No, I watch your show almost every week. I mean,
Random.
Deep down, I think Bill Maher, even though he is a liberal, wants to do good. My open question to him, and for atheists watching this video, what is good? By what definition do you measure it? Because you might be hearkening back to Christian ethics and Christian morality. The final point that I will say if I ever meet Bill Maher again is, Bill, I know you want to defend the West. You talk about defending Western civilization, of which I admire. I agree. And we did agree that Christianity gave us Western civilization. So he loves Western civilization, but he hates the thing that gave us Western civilization, which is Christianity. With that, I thank you guys for watching this video. Subscribe, leave us some comments. Again, I had to play as the visitor here on the away team. I decided to make it a friendly, magnanimous conversation. I hope I'm never that close to marijuana or weed again. But with that, thank you guys. God bless you. A lot more that I could say and will say about the proofs of God, from the fine-tuning, from space, time, and matter put into existence by a spaceless, timeless, and all-knowing being, which of course is a proof of God, or that time had a start, or the ontological perspective of God. All I have to say, I just hope all of you give your life to Jesus. Jesus saves. God bless. Thank you so much.